wide-ranging assessment currently taking place, certainly across our defense support. What more does Israel need? And as you heard, Joe, also, what does the U.S. need to do in order to deter the likes of Iran or other groups that might want to try and exploit this situation? And I think the movement of a carrier group to the Eastern Mediterranean is designed to have that effect. You also obviously have a robust effort on the intelligence side. I think we should expect, Joe, in the coming days, weeks, that U.S. intelligence will help to, in some cases, publicize what was known and who knew it when. What role did Tehran have in these events? Because that is going to play a large part in any subsequent action that will take place. And then lastly, my former Department of State will be looking at how do you assemble the international community for stronger support to Israel? Because while you saw those statements of sorrow and solidarity, I think the concern in a lot of foreign capitals right now is whether or not they will stick with Israel as it exacts both retribution as well as tries to diminish Hamas's capability to inflict more harm on Israel and especially on Israeli civilians.
Not lost on us that the White House called a lid, as they call it, already today. Brett, that's when they're basically telling reporters they can go home, that there will be no more news here for the day. The president's going to be up to his own business and no more public events. Does that say to you that they're circling the wagons and having some important meetings at the White House this afternoon?
Well, certainly important meetings, calls, the president's call list will be extensive. And yet, Joe, and I think this is important, that in these moments of national security concern, we need to hear from the president. Prime Minister Netanyahu has been criticized both in terms of how long it took him to come out and publicly address the Israeli people as well as the international community, as well as how infrequent those updates, including from other Israeli officials, have been. I think President Biden has got to get out there more. He has got to exert more public leadership on this issue, keeping those allies publicly pressured to continue their support for Israel.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the money in the prisoner swap that was being debated on Sunday morning television and continues to this moment in Washington, D.C. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, was out and was asked about this, even trying to get ahead of it, remembering this was $6 billion that was in an account that was unlocked and, in fact, moved to a different account. I'll let you listen to his words for humanitarian uses as part of our recent prisoner swap. Here's Antony Blinken.
They have had from day one, under our law, under our sanctions, the right to use these monies for humanitarian purposes. They were moved from one account to another in another country to facilitate that use. As of now, not a single dollar has been spent from that account. And again, the account is closely regulated by the U.S. Treasury Department, so it can only be used for things like food, medicine, medical equipment. That's what this is about.
All right, so that's the official line here. But I wonder if listening to Nikki Haley might help illuminate the other side of this. Brett, this is Nikki Haley on Meet the Press yesterday saying, grow up, everybody. It's irresponsible for Antony Blinken to be speaking that way and definitively.
I actually think it was irresponsible for Secretary Blinken to say that the $6 billion doesn't weigh in here. I mean, let's be honest with the American people and understand that Hamas knows and Iran knows they're moving money around as we speak because they know $6 billion is going to be released. That's the reality. When I was at the United Nations, you saw that when those planes full of cash sent by Obama to Iran, I went to the International Atomic Energy Agency. I met with them. What happened was those funds were sent to Hezbollah in Lebanon. They were sent to Hamas in Gaza. They were sent to the Houthis in Yemen. They go and spread terrorism every time they get a dollar.
All right. So, look, Nikki Haley is running for president, but also our former UN ambassador. Brett, is there some truth to both of these? We know the restrictions on the use of this money, but does the anticipation mean that some of this is fungible? What's your take?
Yeah, the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Yes, if $6 billion in funds are coming in, that frees up funds for other purposes. And that's essentially the argument that Ambassador Haley is making. And yet, at the same time, it's important for the audience to understand that this money isn't U.S. money. It was money that was frozen in an account that belongs to Iran. And what the Biden administration is trying to do is use it as leverage to obviously get the release of 5 Americans who were unjustly held in Iranian prisons. I think now, Joe, the interesting question is, can they use the release or partial release of some of that money to free some of both the U.S. as well as Israeli hostages that are held by Hamas, and essentially tell Tehran, if you want any of this funds, you're going to have to ensure the release of those hostages. But just as a point of reference, when an Israeli soldier a couple decades ago was captured by Hamas, the deal that came out of it was 1,000 Hamas fighters for one Israeli soldier. So that's the scope of and the precedent of what we're looking at.
Well, and I don't think that's going to